And Nate does has filed so many reports that have obviously led to legislation, reports that have opened people's eyes. And unfortunately, we had a tragic event that happened in the middle of April, I believe on the 17th, where a bus overturned in Chester County. It was a deadly accident. A 13-year-old was unfortunately killed in this. And this was an odd occurrence. We don't normally see situations like this. And so it obviously was on Nate's radar to look into this, and especially being a district that is a public school district, I believe Lexington District 2, it's called, from around Columbia, the Columbia area. It was an event that they were heading to or coming from, I would say, coming back from Charlotte, so some type of school trip. But anyway, Nate, I'll bring you on now, and you can kind of talk about this. First, let's start with this. In this type of occurrence, and like I just said, this is odd that something like this happens, especially an overturned bus, whereas we finally learned from the investigation it was a blown tire. That seems a little odd. So that piqued your interest. Let's start there. How did you know something was here to dig into?
Right. So first of all, I was out of town when this happened.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of monitoring it. We were visiting family, and I was kind of keeping an eye on what was happening here. And kind of in talking to several people in the newsroom after, we realized that we wanted to pull the maintenance records. The school district had said a tire blew. That's who said that, right? The state troopers are still investigating this crash.
Okay.
But we wanted to know, well, what information there is about the history of this bus? Is there any information they've learned after the crash that maybe would help us better understand how in the world this could happen, right? There were 3 buses that came to Charlotte early in the morning and then drove home that afternoon. One of them reportedly blew a tire, hit a guardrail, flipped over. A 13-year-old boy died.
Mm-hmm.
Just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Not the kind of situation that we as the public should accept.
Right.
Right. And so we finally got the records back earlier this week. And initially, there were more than 200 pages, Colin. I mean, a ton of them. And
right.
A few things jumped out to me. And I think most people, they would jump out to. But I really didn't want to come to any assumptions or conclusions yet, because this is really critical. We're talking about facts. That's what we're seeking here.
Mm-hmm.
We noticed fairly early on that within 2 weeks, just 2 weeks before this crash, the school district had to change another tire on that bus because it had some metal rod in kind of the side of the tire. To me, that seemed like kind of a freak situation.
Right.
Right? It could happen to anybody. And then you look back a couple of years prior, 2023, the front driver's side tire had a blowout on the same bus, hit a guardrail. The high school football team was on the bus. To my knowledge, nobody was hurt. But again, it'd be easy to put out a headline that said, bus had history of tire problems, right? And I'm not an expert in this. You know, I try to become an expert pretty quickly, but we were trying to kind of figure out, well, is there a story here? What do we need to kind of reveal? And I reached out to some folks and ended up getting connected with an attorney who's mainly focuses on tire failures on commercial vehicles.
Okay.
And then we started talking through it. Now, number one, in this big packet of documents the school district gave us, there is a handwritten statement from the bus driver who says he was driving back from Charlotte, passed a tractor trailer, heard a loud boom that sounded like it was coming from the front passenger side. The bus hit a guardrail, flipped. He says before they left that morning, he did a pre-trip inspection and deemed the tires to be all safe. Now, what we don't know is, did he do the same thing before they left Charlotte? It doesn't say in that document.
Right.
But we were also trying to figure out, well, were there quarterly inspections? Yes, check. I see that in the documents. Were there any other issues with this bus previously? And we did find these other crashes. And so when you look at these other crashes, then you realize that this bus, for the majority of the last 2 years, was not out on the road. Okay, the bus was made in 2019, according to these records. It's 2025. For most of the last couple of years, it's been out of commission, either in one auto repair shop or another. Now, again, I'm not an expert. I'm trying to learn about tires here,
right,
because I've had a tire go flat quickly, but never a blown tire. This is like when the tread is basically coming off of the tire.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the assumption is that happened here. And we realized that, number one, based on the records, based on me looking through these records tons of times, I cannot find any evidence that the front right tire, if that is in fact the tire that blew, was ever changed. So a tire life expectancy, according to this expert, Matt Wetherington, an attorney that focuses on this, is right around 6 years. So this would have been nearing the life expectancy. It only had about 20,500 miles. But when we're talking about the life expectancy, that usage doesn't really matter. How long can the tire?
If it sits, right?
Yeah.
Dormant. Yeah.
I mean, if you have a tire that's brand new but 6 years old, it's a problem.
Right.
Is what he's telling me.
Right.
It doesn't matter how much it's been used. So number one, we kind of see in the records that kind of indicate that that tire had not been changed. Also, this bus has been sitting in different places. We don't know if it was in a garage. We don't know if it was outside.
Right.
We don't know how
Exposed
often.
to heat. The
Exactly.
elements. Yeah.
We don't know how often people were checking the tire pressure to make sure it wasn't getting underinflated. Those buses are heavy. And I look at some Google Maps of the 3 different auto shops. It's hard to tell. I mean, at least the latest one, I can't see a garage that a bus would fit in. I can't see how a bus would be covered. I'm not saying that's what happened, but it
Right.
could be a factor. And that's what's really critical when we look through these documents. I mean, basically, you're looking at possible contributing factors here: the age of the tire, the fact that the bus may have been exposed for long periods of time to the elements, and maybe the tread got brittle and the sides of the tires got brittle. When you inflate it, it could lead to a tire tread separation. And that's what the expert we talked to thinks ultimately happens. He says this isn't a situation, he can't imagine it is, where it hit something, right? The tire hit something and went kind of off or
Blew
whatever.
up or something,
Or
yeah.
a situation, it could be, where there's a defect with the tire, a design or manufacturing defect. So we still don't know the answer, but this does open up some new questions. Now,
Right.
Lexington, South Carolina is not in our viewing area per se for WCNC Charlotte, but we have a sister station in Columbia.
We do.
WLX.
WLTX.
LTX.
Yep.
Yep. And so the more information we can get out to the public, the better decisions they can make about what they want to demand of their schools or of this investigation.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, this attorney, and I know he's an attorney, but he's saying that the troopers, their investigation, it's not going to do a forensic exam of this tire. So if there's a defect, which there could have been, you're not going to really know. He's really thinking that the families involved should get an attorney, any attorney, who can have the expertise and resources to do a forensic examination.
So this is not over. Yeah.
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 I mean, I can imagine it is. And,
Right.
And we're still waiting on this lengthy investigation, which I think will be revealing too.
So here's my next question, because I do know some inside baseball information, because I've seen some of your work here at home, right? Or not here at home, but here at the station. And I do know that you were looking at this law in South Carolina, right, as it relates to like the front axle. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, so there is an issue where there's a federal law.
Okay, that's a federal
There's
law.
a federal law that says you cannot have a retread tire on the front axles of a
Right.
bus.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't know if that's a factor here.
Okay.
How do we know what kind of tire?
Okay.
But you know,
Okay.
again, the records don't show anything
It's
but
hard
the
to tell.
manufacturer tire on
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
They changed a couple of other tires on the left side of the bus.
Got it. But that
And
wasn't.
I've looked at the pictures of the bus that we can see. It was on its side. I really couldn't see
We
one
just showed
tire.
video. Yep.
Yeah, and it's the tire that
Yeah.
we think is in question, what the attorney thinks is in question based on what
Okay.
the bus driver said. So, I mean, the law prohibits that. Who knows
Yeah.
if this is even a factor here.
Right.
But it's one more thing to consider.
That's what I'm thinking. And that's what I'm saying, right? Like you have to do your due diligence to look through some of this stuff, and that brings me to my next point: is why this is so interesting. Because that point was not only did you sniff that out, but I think another viewers, right? They tend to see what you report on, and then they try to not necessarily give their 2 cents, but they try to help, right? Like, is this an open avenue? So it's nice to have that conversation with the public because we're doing the public's work,
Yeah.
and it's nice to have that input as well.
And we got
So-
some of that information from a viewer
And that's-
who said,
yes.
what about the front tires?
Yes.
You know, and I looked at the federal law at least.
Yeah.
And to see what that says. And I think, you know, again, we're not trying to jump to any conclusions here, but
Exactly.
we're getting whatever information is available
Yeah.
to help inform, because this kind of thing shouldn't happen. But you know what the attorney told me? The bus driver may have done everything right, and he couldn't have prevented this. If that tread separated, you may not been able to see
Nothing
that.
you can do.
Yeah, and they were airing up the tires. The records show as recently as March, the month before this happened,
Yeah.
they checked the tires. They aired the ones up that needed it. So,
Okay.
you know, it's a few factors that could be in play here, and I don't know that we're going to have an answer until at least the Highway Patrol finishes their investigation, and perhaps if there's, you know, a legal civil investigation too.
So my next question would be, right, you've got all of these questions, not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but things that you need to grasp, right? So what would be the next phase of this? I mean, give us an behind the minds view in terms of where you would go, because you do have a lot of things to ask. I guess, do you just see where it goes from here, or what does that look like?
Well, let me tell you what I did, first of all, when I went through these records. And I talked to this attorney. Again, I'm not trying to assume anything.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn
Yeah.
quickly about tires. And we're coming to these conclusions that I just shared with you all. And I said yesterday afternoon, I said, I'm going to email the district. And I'm going to tell them, here's what we're going to report tomorrow.
Okay.
We talk to an expert. Here's what your records show and what they don't show. And I want to give you the chance to dispute it or to provide additional context.
I love that.
And we didn't hear back from them. I gave them a morning deadline of today, which is a short period of time, but at the same time, I want to make sure that they have some time to huddle up and say anything that we need to know.
Right.
Because I don't want to be reckless.
Right.
It's not something I'm going to
But
do.
we can't pause the story.
Yeah, I mean, we got
obviously,
the
for a
information
week.
Monday, and it took a couple days for us to get to a point we felt comfortable sharing it.
Right.
It's not like we just threw it on TV or on
Exactly.
the web. And I'm proud of us for taking our time because you want to do it the right way. So previously, the district said, we're not going to comment on this.
Mhm.
This was at Monday, so we're not going to say anything else about this because it's under investigation. So, what I would hope would happen now is an internal review there at the district of all of their buses. I would imagine that kind of thing would happen,
Okay.
just to make sure all of their buses are getting maintained properly, and any that might be at a shop, check with the shop to make sure they're covered. Check with the shop to make sure the tires are getting serviced. Check to the shop, any shop, and all records to make sure older tires are getting replaced. Again, maybe none of this is even a factor.
Yeah.
But these are things that are at least general reminders that could help better protect people moving forward.
Okay. Great stuff. So Nate's story will air tonight, right, Nate?
At 6 o'clock, yep.
6 o'clock. So look for that. It'll be on WCNC, WCNC Plus as well. And then if you miss it, you can stream it whenever you would like to. And don't forget, as I've said before, Nate has filed so many other stories, not necessarily relating to bus crashes, but on a myriad of things. One of the things that I believe you just won an award on, Buried, the series. A fascinating story that really is not over with,
Right.
but I know that you are intensely tracking. So this man does a lot of work, the entire team. He's got Shermer, one of our amazing photographers as well that he works with. So, hey, keep going at it. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the story at 6
Thanks,
tonight.
Colin. Actually, in the middle of the day today, we went up to Mooresville to interview a person for another story we're working on.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're always juggling a lot of balls, but
Right.
you want to make sure when you have the information you're comfortable, you can share it
Right.
safely with
Right.
the public without being reckless, that we do that. And so I'm glad that we're given the time to do that because that's really important.